Hello. So today we're going to be talking about the Simpsons Hit and Run, which is a 2003 Grand Theft Auto clone where you play as a member of the Simpsons family and you drive around and you do errands for many of the show's side characters. At the start of the game, the town is invaded by giant electronic wasps. Accompanied, the wasps are black surveillance vans. I don't know why they needed both, but they decided they needed both. Homer decides to attempt to figure out who is responsible for spying on the town by following these black vans and seeing who they are reporting to. So I'm coming to Simpsons Hit and Run with absolutely no nostalgia. Having not played it when it first came out, I played the GameCube version of Simpsons Road Rage, which is a crazy taxi skin Simpsons game. And this game feels the same game with added ability to get out of your car and, quote, steal cars from other people. You're never really actually stealing anything from anybody, or when you get into a car owned by somebody else, you kind of sit in the passenger seat and they take you where you want to go. It's a very confusing visual. Yeah, anyway. So this is supposed to be a Grand Theft Auto clone, but its similarities to Grand Theft Auto kind of end at that ability to get out of the car and then you get in other cars and you drive around. That's what they took from Grand Theft Auto. The portion of the game where you are out of the car feels more like a late 90s platformer than it does a Grand Theft Auto. Your main activities when you're out of the car are jumping, collecting coins, and breaking boxes or vending machines to get more coins to collect. So it's more of a filler for gameplay than actual gameplay. The one thing I was hoping for in a Simpsons video game from the early 2000s would be a Simpsons-esque story. And while the game does reuse a lot of lines from the show, and it includes all of the original voice actors, the actual story and dialogue were not written by anyone who ever worked for The Simpsons.
And when you're caught, it's expulsion, Bart! Expulsion!
And it becomes immediately obvious very early in the game. So some early scenes, I was especially taken aback by Marge, some of her dialogue, and some of the characterizations in the game that just didn't feel like Marge.
Marge, that black van is spying on us.
Oh, homie, you're so sexy when you're paranoid.
And then, of course, in the first level, Marge is kind of used as a stand-in for someone rallying against video game violence. Now, this is definitely something Marge would do in the show, but it's very clumsy satire, which is obviously trying to capitalize on the Jack Thompson, a lawyer who became famous for pointing out the violence in Grand Theft Auto.
He's spying on everybody. We've got to follow him.
Not now, Homer. A new violent video game has hit the streets, and we need to get rid of it before it warps any children with its bloops and bleeps.
But that game sounds awesome.
And therefore should be destroyed.
I guess.
I can definitely see what the writers were thinking when they added that small side story, but the execution is just not up to par with the level of humor and satire of a Simpsons episode. It's a cheap imitation, and it stood out more in that moment than the average small bits of story and dialogue scattered throughout the game.
If only kids would play more video games about sharing.
Marge, you know I abhor crazy plans. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go spy on my boss.
Just something is definitely missing. But even a weak Simpsons story would be forgiven because this is a game with The Simpsons. This is a big deal. At least it probably would have been in 2003. Any inclusion of Simpsons characters, a voice or story is just only there to enhance the gameplay. And while the occasional quote from the show made me giddy, the game did not. The missions are all car-based and timed, just like Simpsons Road Rage or Crazy Taxi would have been. So you get in your car and you complete a multi-stage mission in a certain amount of time. For example, Principal Skinner needs help running errands with his mother, so you need to go to the dry cleaner, then to Krusty Burger, and then to the casino in a certain amount of time, or you need to start the mission all over again.
Principal Skinner! Bart's missing!
Bart's gone? What a tragedy. To get your mind off this terrible loss, which we all feel, why don't you run a few errands, or as I call them, grief helpers for me?
But Bart's only missing!
Well, looking for that little treasure can't help anything. You might as well pick up Mother's dry cleaning for me.
And then repeat that formula, and that is completely the game. That's it. It actually, the engine really does feel like it was taken from Simpsons Road Rage, which was a Crazy Taxi clone, and not in any way similar to Grand Theft Auto, and just slapped on to this new game, and then new features were added to the engine. That's really what I think happened. So there are a few mission types, but they all involve the cars and completing time stages. After a few of them, they all blur together, and it all starts to feel meaningless. In level 2, there is a mission where Bart needs to ram cars and destroy them to get rid of cell phone signals. In level 3, Lisa needs to do basically the same mission. They has to ram cars and destroy them. It's lazy, and it feels like the developers just didn't have enough time to finish their game, or even enough time to create a conceptual framework of what their game could become. It's difficult to talk about a game like Simpsons Hit and Run because it's become kind of like an iconic game of that gaming generation. Like, I see people talk about it all the time as an iconic game of their childhood, as a cornerstone. And it's starring one of the most iconic cartoon families of all time, and frankly, my favorite show of all time, The Simpsons. But it's just a hastily assembled GTA knockoff that happens to star The Simpsons. I love the graphics, I love the setting, I love hearing the Simpsons voice actors trying their best in this game. Unfortunately, I just stopped having fun very quickly. This is one of those times when I wish I could go back in time and play the game in the time and place where it was contextually relevant. I wish I could go back to 2003 when I was in school and had more time, when The Simpsons was just starting to get tired but hadn't developed into the shell of its former self that exists today. Perhaps then it would have hit all of the right buttons for me, but it's just too late for that.
What about Bart? I asked you, have you seen him?
I think I saw him at the Noiseland arcade. Ugh, video games were a waste of money.